Welcome to Unit 3, Culture, Part 2. What will I learn in this video? In Part 1, we learned about understanding culture. In this section, we'll understand the elements of culture, which includes cultural universals, innovation, diffusion, and globalization. We'll also talk about subcultures and countercultures, cultural shock, ethnocentrism, cultural relativism, and xenocentrism. We'll also talk about Canadian culture and multiculturalism. And all this is in Chapter 3 in your textbook. Cultural universals. Cultural universals are practices found in almost every culture. So examples would be language, sports, religious ceremonies, ritual gift-giving, laws, music, clothing, goes on and on. The practices are universal, but the context varies. So what happens is similar, but how it happens is quite different. For example, wrestling or log throwing. Perhaps you've tried surfing. Or perhaps you've really tried surfing in Maui. Cricket, bocce ball, perhaps you play football, or perhaps you play football. Different types of hockey. So with innovation, humans are very creative, and new technologies and products are constantly being produced. These innovations can have significant cultural impacts, both positive and negative. Here's one that I'm sure you're familiar with. The cell phone. Certainly in the last 15 to 20 years, the cell phone has become an integral part of many cultures in the world. It has become a way to exchange information, to learn information, to write your student papers, to work. And what about this? This could be how you carry your computer in the future. This pen actually folds, and through a beam of light, transmit your computer screen and your keyboard. When your fingers break the light on the keyboard, you're typing. This is a professor who uses artificial intelligence and numerous touchscreens for his lectures. This already is a way of life. In the last 10 or 15 years, look at the innovations that have come about. And we can only imagine what will happen in the next 10 or 15 years. Diffusion and globalization. So diffusion is when cultural items or practices are transmitted from one group to another. So something happens with one cultural group, that practice is actually moved into another cultural group and becomes a part of the second group. Globalization is worldwide integration of government policies, cultures, social movements, etc., and that is accelerated cultural diffusion. So this happens, and this is happening much faster because of globalization. Some examples of this are the Golden Arches. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this symbol. Perhaps if you order McDonald's for takeout in Cairo, it will be delivered. Or here's McDonald's beside the communist banner. Everybody loves to sit on Ronald McDonald's knee. And here's Ronald McDonald with the traditional Thai greeting. In Spain, You can have a beer with your lunch as long as you're at least 16 years of age. The Maharaja Mac. Kimchi burgers. The Atlantic lobster from the east coast of Canada. And these burgers from China. The one on the left is made out of squid ink, and the one on the right is a regular burger or bun with black poppy seeds. They're actually chicken burgers with a pile of mashed potatoes. Subcultures. Subcultures are a segment of a culture that has characteristics that distinguish it from the broader culture. It has its own distinctive values, norms, and behaviors. Individuals can belong to more than one subculture at a time. So examples of this would be religious groups and ethnic groups. So there are numerous religious groups and ethnic groups that are subcultures of a larger culture. Cultures within cultures, like Little Italy on College Street in Toronto, is an example of a subculture. Subculture can also be language. So argot is a specialized language that distinguishes a subculture from the wider society. Prison argot is specialized language that distinguishes a subculture, being those in prison, from the wider society. So here are some examples of words that are used in the prison system. Fish, go boy, mule, skin fan, screws, shank, and wolf. So how many of those do you know? Maybe one or two? So fish is a new prisoner. Go boy means run away. So when someone is escaping from prison, the other prisoners will yell, go boy, go boy. In other words, run away. A mule is someone who brings drugs into the prison from the outside. A skin fan is a strip search by guards for contraband. Screws are the guards. Shank is a homemade prison knife. And a wolf is an inmate who is straight on the outside, but a same-sex sexual predator on the inside. And this is from a book by Serge Leclerc, Untwisted, who is now an author and politician on the West Coast. He spent many of his early life in prison and wrote a book called Untwisted. Countercultures. A counterculture is a subculture that rejects conventional norms and values and adopts alternatives. The nonconformists, at odds with the larger society. So an example, perhaps the hippies. Bike gangs. Punks. Goth. And the question is, at what point are people nonconformist and actually at odds with the larger society? And who decides that? Culture shock. So culture shock is a feeling of uncertainty and disorientation when we encounter new or different cultural practices. Often this happens for people when they are overseas as students, moving overseas, away from home, traveling for a long period of time. Initially, leaving is very exciting. Everybody wants to go away. It's a wonderful, fabulous opportunity. I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. Fabulous. You get there and reality sits in. Plonk. Frustration, annoyance with everyday differences. It's very frustrating. I can't find this. I can't do this. We don't do this at my home. And you hit a bottom. Then you begin to adjust. And you know what? This is okay. I've figured out how to feed myself. I've figured out where to go for my job, for school. I understand deadlines. And then there's confronting those deeper cultural, personal issues. And this is the low part of the iceberg. These are the things that you cannot see in culture. Beliefs, values, even sense of humor. This is the lowest part where you can't really see it. It's not tangible. Slowly people come out of culture shock and assimilate and adapt to culture in a new way. Ethnocentrism is a tendency to evaluate other cultures based on our own cultural lens. So seeing one's own culture as superior to others. So saying things like, in Canada we, in my culture I, those things are ethnocentric, if you believe that they are the best way to do things. Cultural relativism. The attempt to understand cultures on their own terms, attempting to understand why cultural practices exist rather than judging them. And understanding does not necessarily involve supporting or agreeing with the cultural practice. Just because you understand something doesn't mean that you support or agree with it. In your textbook, Sarah Cummings has an activity. And she says that our perceptions often tied to our cultural understanding and upbringing can vary by place, time, and context. So I'm going to show you pictures of different animals, and you can decide whether they are a pet, whether they are food, or whether they are a pest. Sometimes they're all three, sometimes they are none of them, sometimes they are two of them. Think about this in terms of other cultures and parts of the world. What about a cat? Is a cat a pet, a food, or a pest? What about a dog? A pet, food, or a pest? A rat, is that a pet, food, or a pest? What about fish? Is that a pet, food, or a pest? A cow, pet, food, pest? Pig, pet, food, pest? Insects, pet, food, pest? Shrimp, pet, food, or pest? Horses, pet, food, or pest? Snakes, pet, food, pest? Hamsters, pet, food, pest? Tarantula, pet, food, pest? And to remind you, in the previous video, we saw Angelina Jolie taking a bite out of a tarantula. Xenocentrism is a preference for a culture other than your own. So, for example, the assumption that products produced in other countries are always superior to domestic products. Niagara College is located in the Niagara region, one of the best grape growing areas and wine producers in Canada, North America, perhaps even the world. Yet some people in the Niagara region will still say that they prefer a French wine, or an Italian wine, or a Chilean wine. And the same thing with these Belgian chocolates, or car identities. Multiculturalism. Diversity is a central aspect of Canadian society. Multiculturalism is considered an important part of Canadian identity. It is protected in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Multicultural Act of 1985 mandates equality before the law, protects people from discrimination, protects language rights, allows people to practice any religion, and allows people to maintain their ethnic and social identities. The Multiculturalism Act in Canada was the first in the world to be so direct in saying that people have the right to be free from discrimination, have language rights, practice any religion, and to maintain their ethnic and social identities. In summary of Chapter 3, Part 2, the key points: culture is learned. Each culture follows norms that are passed generationally. These are instilled and enforced through positive and negative sanctions. Material culture includes all physical objects that a society creates and uses. Non-material culture includes the values, beliefs, norms, and sanctions of any given group. Cultural universals are the practices known in every human culture, although they can vary. Cultures expand through innovation, diffusion, and globalization. Both subcultures and countercultures exist in every society. Ethnocentrism can lead to prejudice and discrimination. We should attempt to practice cultural relativism in order to increase understanding. Next, we'll be looking at Unit 4, Socialization, Chapter 4, in your textbook.